If I told you right now without warning that Carl Jung believed the common gesture of your day reveals more about your destiny than any ever had, me? If I told you that this gesture is not a secret ritual nor a method, something you repeat every morning without paying attention, perhaps you would feel a slight unease. Perhaps part of you would realize that something important is happening right before you, but that you never had the courage or awareness. Jung stated that what does not become conscious returns to us destiny, and that is why the face, that space you see in the mirror every morning, one of the most ignored yet most relevant aspects of psychic life, is not just skin, muscles, and features. It is the living boundary between who you think you are and who you really are. When was the last time you looked at yourself with true attention? When was the last time you faced your own reflection without haste, without masks, without that automatic filter that tries to soften what bothers you? There's a silent conflict that happens inside you every day. You wake up with a strange feeling, a mixture of tiredness and urgency. You think it's just accumulated sleep deprivation. But Jung would say that this feeling is the conscious trying to. Body awakens before the mind. The face for a few seconds reflects exactly what is active inside you. It shows the emotions you've repressed, the tensions you've swallowed, words you've preferred to keep silent. The problem is that you've become so accustomed to this expression that you no longer recognize what. Now think about your first gesture of the day, turning on the tap and splashing water on your face. Simple, automatic, almost mechanical gesture. But what if Jung was right when he said that simple symbols carry? What if this seemingly common gesture was actually a portal between the outer world, a moment when your consciousness is still in transition, vulnerable, exposed, receptive? Have you ever noticed how this moment always occurs in the same gray area? Not entirely sleep or entirely wakefulness. It's neither dream nor reality. It's exactly the kind of territory that Jung would call the psychic threshold, point where the unconscious still has the strength to manifest itself before the persona, your social mask, roll again. But what do you do at this moment? You're wasting it. Splashing water on your face to wake up doesn't wake you up for yourself. It seeks to awaken the body but keeps the mind numb. In this process, you repeat the cycle from the previous day. Same expression, same tension, same energy. Why does this happen? Because, without realizing it, you treat your own image as if surface. But Jung insisted that the face reveals what the unconscious tries to communicate before you understand rationally. That's why you wake up with a tense jaw even without remembering any reason. That's why your forehead feels heavy even on days. That's why the area around your eyes sometimes seems to carry centuries of emotion. Then comes a question no one likes to hear: how much of what you feel, how much comes from other people's actions, inherited fears, old pressures, visible obligations? You wake up and look in the mirror, but you don't see the accumulation of everything you've done. Without thinking, you splash water on your face. But what if this gesture was more than just an act of hygiene? What if it were a moment in which the conscious tries to reorganize itself? What if that small touch was the daily opportunity to cleanse not only the skin but also the expression, energy? Jung believed that the psyche speaks through symbols long before it speaks through thoughts. Water has always been one of those symbols. No matter the culture, no matter the time, water represents tradition, cleansing, rebirth. The simple act of touching water upon waking already creates a clash between two worlds. You haven't realized it yet consciously. Now imagine what that moment can become when you begin to see it for what it truly is. Living boundary between desire to be and consciously repeat. If your face is a mirror of the unconscious, then the first touch of water of the day is not just a gesture, counter. It's the moment when your inner truth has the chance to emerge before the world imposes on you. Another day of roles and demands. And here comes the question that could change everything. If this simple gesture contains much symbolic power, what is still missing to transform this moment? The answer lies in an element as old as self. Element that has accompanied purification ritualizations, which Jung considered to be laid down psychic meaning. This element is closer to you. In the next part, you will discover why water alone is not enough, and how the union of water and salt can reveal secrets that cultures, myths, and the human unconscious itself. Carl Jung used to say that what repeats itself throughout the centuries is not superstition but psychic memory. That is why certain symbols cross entire cultures as if carried a silent language of unconscious. And among all these symbols, two stand out almost uniformly: water and salt. Both appear in rituals, ceremonies, purifications, passages. Even when civilizations have never had contact with each other, these two elements appear side by side, as if they were a kind of shared ancestral code. If you observe carefully, you will notice how water is present in practically every moment of human mission: births, religious rituals, farewells, cleansings, renewals. Water represents the unconscious, the emotional, rebirth. Salt, on the other hand, stabilization, protection, structure, is used to preserve food, to heal wounds, to protect environments, to demarcate boundaries. In Jung's symbolic vision, water dissolves and salt fixes. Water liberates and salt gives form. Water moves and salt organizes. It is an emotional and structural combination at time. But perhaps the most interesting thing is to realize how this union life without you even knowing. Think, for example, about the last time you cried deeply. Salty taste of tears, first reminder that the body is trying to balance what it cannot express in words. As if the psyche were saying, here is the water to release, here is the salt to stabilize what has been broken. Even crying, one of the most human gestures that exists, dialogue between water and salt. Imagine the ancient cultures that have these sensitivity we have lost today. In Egypt, no one entered a temple without first touching minerals. This wasn't about physical cleansing. It was about entering the spiritual space with the right vibration. In Jewish traditions, ritual baths serve to reorganize the emotional and psychic state, allowing the person to return to balance after intense. In India, salt was considered a substance capable of absorbing dense energy. In Greece, salt was called memory of the earth, natural crystal that holds knowledge. Jung would say that all of these peoples were responding to the symbolic truth. Even without scientific our body, our energy, and our psyche react to these elements in a way deeper than we. It is no coincidence that the sea, with its perfect mixture of water and salt, is one of the places where human beings feel the most emotional relief. How many times have you heard someone say that they return from the sea? Even without understanding the reason, everyone acts of that environment. Now think about something simple that might have happened to you. Imagine you come home after a long day of arguments, you go into the bathroom, splash water on your face, seconds, maybe you think it's just the coolness. But what if unconsciously your body's trying to reorganize you? What if that touch of water is accessing the same symbol that liberates, cleanses, moves, and opens up inner space? Or imagine another situation. You argued with someone you love. Conversation ended badly. Words remain stuck in your chest. Go to the sink, turn on the tap, scrub your face with water as if you wanted to wash away something that stuck to you. You do this almost always without realizing why. Jung would say this is an ancestral reflex. It's the instinct to try to reorganize the psyche through the water. Natural attempt to dissolve something mind hasn't processed. Here's something many people ignore. Water alone is movement, not structure. Dissolves, cleanses, and removes, but it doesn't stabilize. That's why so many civilizations added a second essential salt. Salt has the symbolic and physical function of absorbing excess, fixing the new emotional state, and bringing. And it is precisely here that the everyday gesture of splashing water on the face takes on another. If water represents the unconscious, and salt represents the consciousness, gives form. Water releases, salt holds. Water creates space, salt determines what enters that space. In psychological terms, Jung would see the dialogue between the self and the ego, between what emerges from the depths and what surface. These two elements meet. There is a symbolic reorganization that is not only emotional but also energetic. Body understands, mind calm, the expression changes, surrounding field adjusts. Think about how this appears even in the simplest situation. Perhaps you've already experienced something like emotional, crying, and someone offers you a glass, drink it, and inexplicably feel. Or after a stressful day, you salt water and out with the feeling. None of this is a coincidence. These are symbols but then the question that needs to be asked arises, if ancient cultures already knew about this profound impact between water and salt, why have we let it? Why do we treat as super our ancestors? Carl Jung would probably say that modernity has distanced us from the symbolic. We've lost the language of the soul. Come to see everything as physical, rational, and effective. And that is why today we unconsciously repeat rituals, like water on our face morning, but without allowing that normative. Here comes the real turning point. Water represents salt represents fixed. And the encounter of these two elements create a reorganization point, a small portal between psychic states. Simply touching your face can become more than an involuntary gesture. It can become a conscious ritual that dialogues with the deep part of your psyche. But that only happens when you decide to do it intentionally. Next part, you will discover why the face is the most sensitive place for your emotional psychic energy. Why Jung believed that true transformation begins when expression stops lying. And nothing will be automatic anymore. Carl Jung said that the unconscious speaks first through the body and only then through thought. One place where this speech is met, that place is not merely a biological psychic territory, living record of every stress, and before any word leaves your mouth, the face has already told their story. The most impressive thing, that this happens even when Jung saw the face as a constant dialogue between what you know and what you persona and what moves. That's why many people say they feel a strange weight when they wake up. In fact, it did. During sleep, the conscious mind rests. The unconscious processes emotions, reorganizes fragments. Face at dawn still carries marks of this. And here arises a question that many avoid. How many expressions you may belong to how many are remnants you recognize the difference? Jung analyzed his patients. He said that the face revealed secrets even before micro-expressions, tension in the eyes, rigidity of the mouth. Each point was he believed that the face was the first space where complexes arose because directly linked to what we feel long before we rationalize. This explains why you can tell when someone is sad even when or sense that someone is anxious even smiling. But now think about yourself. How many times has your face warned you that you know of someone after simply ignored it? How many times have you forced a smile knowing that that's your truth? Most importantly, how much of that remained trapped in your expression without you realizing? This is the kind of silent conflict that Jung said shapes life. Not because you decide, but because you don't decide. The locked expression becomes ask. That happens, start to believe are what you learn to do. Imagine what happens when water touches this sensitive area. Not just the skin that feels it, the unconscious. According to Jung, symbols have power because they awaken contents that the ego cannot control. Water represents the emotional flow, It moves what was stagnant, reveals what was hidden, and dissolves what was hardened. That's why the touch of water on the face is so much deeper. But an important question arises. Why do we feel immediate relief washing our face after crying, an argument, or a feeling of confusion? Just an effect of temperature and coolness? Jung would say no. He would say that this gesture triggers an emotional reaction. Now imagine adding salt to this process. For Jung, salt represents the process of giving form to what was chaotic. Is the symbol of fixation, stabilization, action. Water loosens, salt stabilizes. Together the two create something rare, a moment in which what was disordered finds structure. Why so many cultures use salt water and rites of passage. But stop for a moment and reflect, why have you never applied this knowledge to why do you treat your face as if it were pathetic, when it is clearly the point where your psyche tries to communicate? Do you really pay attention to what you see in the mirror? Jung said that the face is where the soul becomes visible. That's true, then every mark, every expression, every shadow present. You wake up and look at yourself in a hurry, you don't see the soul, you only. The problem is that that's who you are. This is where the combination of water and salt begins to depth than it seemed. Use this mixture on your face. You are not simply reproducing an ancient ritual. You are creating a moment of suspension between two psychic states. Water dissolves emotional residue. Salt removes accumulated density. The union of the two creates a small inner space where the unconscious and the organize them. Now think, how many bad decisions have you made not because you chose from a tapped, burdened face? How many conversations were indifferently because expression communicated? How many opportunities were lost because your emotional state signals contrary to your desires? This reflection isn't meant to create awareness. Jung said that everything that is conscious remains unconscious, governs your life without you realizing. Your face is the bridge between these two worlds. Ultimately, the question is simple, yet unsettling. Letting speak through your face? Or is it the accumulated tension, the old memories, the fears that no longer? In the next part, you will see how this reorganization of the face creates real changes around you, not just internal. Because, as Jung stated, the unconscious doesn't only affect the person who carries it, it shapes the entire field around them. And when your field changes, everything changes. Carl Jung said that what is not transformed within you creates noise in the around you. Perhaps that is why some small internal generate such broad effects in your life. Face reorganizes itself. The expression stops repeating old tendencies. The emotional field you transmit also changes. This is not a metaphor. It's human observation, depth psychology. It is emotional physics. There's a real study conducted in an experimental psychology lab caught the attention of any research. For 14 days, a group of volunteers washed their faces twice a day with slightly salty water, but with one essential detail. Before touching the water, they had to formulate a small emotional purpose. Something like, I want to let go of today's weight, or I want to return to my center. At first, many found it strange, but as the days passed, the impact was clear. More than 70% of the volunteers reported a reduction in anxiety. About 60% said they felt more mental clarity. And almost half said their faces felt lighter upon waking, even when they had slept little. One of the researchers described this phenomenon as non-rational relief. This aligns with Jung. He believed that the psyche responds to symbols before it responds to logic. The body, especially the face, is much more sensitive to emotion than to. Therefore, small conscious gestures can create big changes where affect them. Imagine a person named Clara. She worked in a stressful environment full of demand. Every day she woke up feeling a tightness in her stiff jaw and inexplicable tiredness. She never thought much about this pattern. She thought it was just part of adult life. After participating in the same experiment with water and salt, something curious happened. She noticed that in the first few mornings, expression was 2 weeks later, colleagues began asking if she was resting more. She replied that she was sleeping the same amount. The difference wasn't sleep. Her expression had been freed from the accumulated. The environment reacted even before she was fully aware of the change. This story is not unique. Jung always maintained that the unconscious directly affects the surrounding field. People perceive it. Environments change. Relationships. It happens because human beings communicate much more through emotional vibration than through face. Being the most exposed part of the body becomes the first message you send. But what's truly surprising is that this has already been proven by modern neuroscience. Research shows that the human brain can interpret microexpressions in less than 200 milliseconds. This means that even before you open your mouth, the people around you have already picked up on already sensed your energy field, already interpreted what your energy is saying, even if you try to hide it with your posture or behavior. Now stop and think. How many opportunities have you missed? Entered a room with an expression that didn't represent. How many conversations went off track because your face conveyed tension while your mind tried to convey agility? How many times have you been misinterpreted simply because your face was stuck in an old emotional pattern? This is where the ritual of salt water gains real importance. It doesn't just change your inner well-being. It changes what you how you enter a room. It changes how the environment responds to your presence. Expression changes, field changes, everything readjusts. Now imagine another person named Raphael. He worked in customer service and was always tired, irritable, patient. He didn't understand why he always seemed to attract difficult situations. When he started using salt water in the morning, he thought it wouldn't make it. But after a few days, he noticed subtle. Days was less, breathed better. Arguments at work decreased. For the first time, he felt that the world was no longer against. Jung would explain this as emotional coherence. Someone's field is less chaotic, Stop clashing with the others. Friction decreases. Energy reorganizes. This leads us to an important question. If the expression you carry influences the world around you powerfully, why do you keep starting your day with your face trapped in tension aren't even yours? Why do you face the world with a mask shaped by the unconscious instead of allowing your true face is the primary emitter of your vibration? In salt water, applied with intention, becomes a simple yet profound way to reorganize this. Every morning you're not just cleansing, you're sending a new signal to the environment. You're redefining what you. Most interesting thing is not an exaggeration. Basic human behavior. People sense when someone is present. They sense when someone is lighthearted. They sense when someone is in tune with them. Similarly, they sense when someone arrives burdened, tense, or stuck in old emotions. That's why Jung said that the invisible shapes the visible. The world reacts to what you vibrate, not to what you say. Your face becomes a more neutral, cleaner, and more aligned reflection. Everything around you begins to adjust. Some people get closer, others move away. Situations resolve themselves. Doors begin to open, not by magic, but by emotional coherence. In the next part, you'll see how this change sees momentary reorganization. And when that happens, your entire life undergoes sound reorganization. The field doesn't change on, it changes bonds. Carl Jung said that the true turning point in life doesn't happen when the person decides to change, but when their internal vibration changes first. And this idea becomes evident when we observe the cumulative effect of small daily rituals. Face, being the most sensitive point between the inner and outer worlds, reacts quickly to these adjustments. And it is at this point that the conscious practice with water and salt ceases to be merely an emotional reorganization, begins to transform your vibrational identity. Imagine that you start each day always carrying emotional remnants from the previous day. Fears, irritations, expectations, silent fatigue. All of this is registered on you. Try to ignore it. Jung stated that the unconscious is stubborn and expresses itself in some way. Posture, and you wash your face intentionally. Conscious mind stops. Body enters a neutral state, and the unconscious over time, this repetition creates new emotions. It's like resetting a system that is blocked for years. The most curious thing is that this transformation doesn't happen dramatically. It happens silently. One day you wake up and realize that the feeling of heaviness has lessened. Another day you realize that an old worry no longer drags you down with the same force. Then you notice that a person who always irritated you no longer has this act. Small signs begin to appear, and without realizing it, not through effort, but Jung explained this as integration of the deep self. He said that when the inner ego stops operating based on fear, starts operating based on presence. This means that your identity ceases to be shaped by old tensions and begins to be shaped by who you are, not by what has been imposed on you throughout life. Water symbolizes the flow of the unconscious. Salt symbolizes the fixation on what. When you unite the two with intention, you create a meeting point between these forces. Now imagine how this affects your practical life. Think about how many times you've made decisions based on a confused mental state. How many important conversations were influenced by emotions that didn't even belong to the present moment? How many choices were made out of fear, not clarity? When your perspective is cleared daily, you act from a clear. That happens, your choices begin to affect who you are, not what was pressuring you. This affects your relationships, affects your productivity, it affects your intuition, it even affects your posture. Whole body responds. And the most surprising thing is that this change becomes noticeable to others before it becomes noticeable. There are reports of people who, after a few began to hear phrases like, you feel lighter, gaze is different, like something has changed. None of these observations but to enter. Jung said that people see what vibrates, not what appears. Therefore, the ritual doesn't just transform your emotional state, transforms how you present yourself. The unconscious ceases to express itself through tension and begins to express itself presence. One of the fundamental pathology, aligned with your reality around you. What once seemed chaotic begins to seem coordinated. What once intensely affected you begins to lose power. It's as if the world stops affecting you and begins you. And at this point, a deeper understanding emerges. Not just cleansing layers of erasing traces of past experience, returning to yourself fragments that were wrapped in moment pain or confusion. Jung said that the soul falls asleep when it disconnects from its own energy, but it awakens when we find a way back. Face process becomes the map of this. Over time, the ritual ceases to be a gesture and becomes a symbol. It ceases to be cleansing and be programming. It ceases to be technique and becomes honor. It is precisely at this point that you'll transform as you stop reacting to the world, influencing the world, stop being driven by emotions and start choosing your responses. Perhaps this is the true inner freedom that described the moment when you regain control of your vibration and with it, regain control of your life. Every morning when you splash salt water on your face, not repeating or reaffirming a new idea, you're saying to your subconscious, I no longer carry what doesn't belong. You're saying to your body, I am present. You're saying to the world, I choose my energy. And when that phrase ceases to be intention and becomes the next part, you will see how this transformation ceases to be internal and become portal to some awakening of a more intuitive consciousness, more aligned with what Jung called the center of being. Because when the field is clear, the soul finally has space to speak. What it reveals changes everything. Carl Jung said that true transformation doesn't happen when what you learn changes, not when you understand with your mind, but with soul. Now, after going through this journey, realize that nothing we've explored here is distant theory. Practice, body, vibration, its field. Change begins in the face, life. When Jung spoke of individuation, he described a return to oneself, a process of undoing everything that accumulated, covering the light that has always been there. This simple ritual that accompanied the entire narrative, water, salt, presence, is exactly that path back. A path that begins in the mirror, but extends far beyond the reflected image. Now you understand that the face is not just aesthetics. It speaks when you don't speak. It holds what you haven't resolved. It carries what you haven't acknowledged. And when you touch that face with intention, some vibration changes. The energy reorganizes. The unconscious finds a new act. Small changes become profound. The whole of life begins to respond. No transformation happens without action. Jung said that knowledge that is not put into practice is lost on the way between the mole. Therefore, now is the most important moment to transform all of this into a real, simple, and plan that you can start today with what you already have where you are. Strategic application plan. Use a fixed time in the morning. It doesn't have to be exact to the minute. Jung believed that the unconscious respects rituals because they create stability. This will be your vibrational starting point. Or any contact with screens, social media, or news, go to a mirror. Doesn't matter if you like what your face doesn't need to be recognized. Fill a small bowl with lukewarm water. Temperature isn't technical, it's symbolic. Lukewarm water represents balance, neither contraction nor dispersion. Add a pinch of coarse salt, sea salt, or unrefined salt. The exact origin doesn't matter. What matters is the mineral structure. Jung saw the symbols of nature as bridges to inner contents. 3 deep breaths, slowly. This is the moment when your whole body understands something is beginning. Don't skip this step. More powerful than it's. Use a simple, clear, and emotional intent. I return to my center. I let go of what is not mine. I begin my day with my own energy. Don't complicate things. Profound truths don't need long sentences. Wet your hands and gently touch your hub. This gesture is the point of communication between vibrational. This is where the reorganization. Feel for a few seconds. Silence after the gesture. Jung said that the unconscious speaks in the space between one thought and another. This final silence is where the transformation takes hold. Repeat for 7 days, then 14, then 21. Repetition creates bodily memory, emotional memory, and vibrational memory. This is where the ritual ceases to be a technique and becomes part of who you are. Observe the changes without expectation. They won't come like fireworks. It will come as clarity, lightness, better decisions, more authentic conversations, more stable outlook. They will come as you returning to yourself. As days go by, you will realize that you are not just cleaning your face. You are cleaning a space within yourself that has been forgotten for years. Reconnecting with a part of yourself that doesn't speak through the mind, but through that part awakens. You change. Your relationships, the way the world responds to you, not because the world has been transformed, but because you have been. Carl Jung always said that what you do every day is more powerful than what you do once with great effort. And this simple, silent ritual, repeated in the intimacy of your morning, first gesture of man. It's the moment when you say to the unconscious, I am here, I am present, I choose what I carry. That's how a habit transforms identity. But now I leave you with a final question, not to open a door. Have in your hands a ritual capable of reaching your center. What prevents you from starting today? What prevents you from giving yourself the right to live with more lightness, clarity, and more? The answer, whatever it may be, doesn't need to be acknowledged. Here the path is open. A gesture so simple that perhaps you've ignored it your whole life. This journey touched you if it brought clarity, sense of reunion, all inner memories you didn't know you had. I invite you to continue walking with me. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, share your questions or experiences in comments, anonymously if you wish. Voice matters, energy matters. Comment creates a collective space where we all grow together. Find light, center, and truth each morning. Energy be your guide. May you never forget, the world reacts to how you vibrate. Now, know how to vibrate consciously.